Welcome back to the Shield Wall. It seems, it would appear that the former Capitol Police, the former DC Swamp Police Chief, is interested in earning the respect of Americans, is interested in salvaging his reputation. Or maybe, see, I don't know too much about the chief of the DC police. I won't refer to them as the Capitol Police because DC is owned by the Vatican. I'm not going to give them that credence. I'm not going to give the pedo pope credence. So he will be referred to on this channel as the former head of DC Police, who I felt like I could get shot by at any moment walking back down from the Capitol Hill. The DC Police. A lot of police departments like the one I live around here, they're perfectly fine. They've never done anything for me that a regular citizen couldn't do, but I still have never seen any reason to lose respect for them. But the DC Police, Officer Sicknick, this is his ex-boss. But his ex-boss seems to be interested in doing his duty to this country. And I have to respect him for that. So, from the RF angle, by Regan Reyes on February 10th, 2021, former DC police chief. It's because it says Capitol there. Former DC police chief blows hole in Dems case against Trump. This has, and I'm going to give it another thumbs. I must log in to vote. So it has 5.9k likes, 182 dislikes, 182 salty idiots. Former DC police, and every time I see Capitol, I will refer to it as DC and speak it in small caps. Do it for the Vatican. Former DC Police Chief Stephen Sund wrote an 8-page letter detailing the events that occurred at the Capitol on January 6th. In the letter addressed to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Sund's timeline of events seems to directly refute the Democrats' claim that the insurrection, more like the insurrection inside the building, before any citizens got there. Before any citizens, before any Antifa, before any outsiders, before any non-senators, before any non-public servants got there, the insurrection was already afoot. Okay? It was already afoot and well underway. Okay. Let's put the blame where it really lies here. That the insurrection on Capitol Hill was incited by a speech given by President Donald Trump on the same day. The Democrats' entire impeachment against Trump as a private citizen rests solely on the assumption that his speech caused the disturbing events that unfolded inside the Capitol as a joint session of Congress meant to certify the electoral votes of the 2020 presidential election. In the letter, Sund, who stepped down as chief shortly after the insurrection occurred, states that his department did not, quote-unquote, did not fail, adding that Capitol Police, DC Police, acted according to the intelligence available prior to the events. There was never any information showing they would be facing a group of thousands of well-coordinated, well-equipped violent criminals. I'm sorry, did you say thousands? There were millions of us there. Sund? We were backed up all the way to the Washington Monument. Millions of us. Okay? Get your story straight. Give me a second. I got a drip. No, I don't. We good right now. For now. Thousands. Of what? There was never any information showing they would be facing a group of quote unquote thousands of well coordinated, well equipped violent criminals, close quote, intent upon attacking law enforcement officers as they sought to gain access to the Capitol itself. Sund asserts that he would like to set the record straight on the events that took place. Quote unquote, there has been much conflicting information presented by various officials and the media regarding preparations and actions taken at the Capitol that day, and I would like to set the record straight from my perspective. He would like to gain the respect of the American people, and I will happily give it to him. Close quote. Okay. Sund adds, quote unquote, I also wish we had better intelligence and warnings as the possibility of this type of military-style armed insurrection. The entire intelligence community seems to have missed this, close quotes. No, they didn't miss it, Sund. They just didn't care. Okay? They were gaming on it. They were betting on it. They were cooking and fixing and waiting. Okay? They had a dirty pot. Okay? Recently, there have been reports claiming that President Trump had offered 10,000 National Guard troops to be in D.C. on January 6th, but those offers were ignored. Oh, but of course. According to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, there's a kink waiting to crack, quote unquote, that accountability needs to rest where it ultimately should be, and that's on Capitol Hill. Former Chief Sund adds in his letter that many in the crowd that overtook the Capitol were wearing radio earpieces, indicating a high level of coordination, while several others carried weapons, chemical munitions, protective equipment, explosives, and climbing gear. These statements call into question the statements from the Democrats where they say the attack was spontaneous and caused by the words President Trump spoke that day. Blame Trump for everything. Stupid fucking lousy demo creeps. Despite his call that supporters, quote unquote, peacefully and patriotically, close quote, make their voices heard by members of Congress, Sund's letter also states that the crowd of coordinated attackers breached the Capitol line of security at 12:52, stating in his letter, quote unquote, we were monitoring the actions and demeanor of the crowd, which at the time did not raise any concerns. When we received word at 12:52 p.m. that a pipe bomb had been located at the Republican National Committee headquarters, I saw that truck. I remember that. That was one of the first things I saw as I got within, I'm going to say, half a mile of the Capitol, of the actual Capitol building. I saw the bomb truck. Yep. Me and, I forgot the name of the guy I was with that day. Evan sent them out with me. Anyway, a pipe bomb had been located at the RNC headquarters, immediately adjacent to Capitol grounds. We responded immediately to coordinate and send resources to the scene, which I witnessed that, including a number of officers, officials, and a bomb squad. Yep, I saw that. We also dispatched resources to look for other explosives, devices, suspects, and vehicles. At almost exactly the same time, we observed a large group of individuals approaching the west front of the Capitol. The timing of the breach, 12:52, is notable because President Trump did not conclude his speech until about 1:13, making it impossible that the group that breached the Capitol did so under the former president's direction. Former president? Former president, you say? You say? Huh? Trump won that election. The fact that President Trump's speech was given about 20 to 30 minutes walking distance from the Capitol makes it even less likely that his words caused the insurrection. Sun's letter also states that the Capitol Police's past experiences with MAGA rallies at the Capitol were handled successfully and peacefully, with few, if any, arrests or injuries. You may access the full letter from former Chief Sund here, which we will now do. Oh, this is a long letter. Okay. We're going to get into some of this. February 1st, 2021. The Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, 1236 Longsworth, HOB, Washington, D.C., 2515. Dear Speaker Pelosi, this week will mark 1 month since the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol. Tomorrow, on D.C., the United States D.C. Police will honor Officer Brian Sicknick. Oh, vomit in my mouth. Who made the ultimate sacrifice as a result of his efforts to defend democracy on January 6, 2021. Although I have not yet had the opportunity to answer your questions or those of any congressional committee since the events of January 6, I want to reach out to you to provide first-hand information regarding the actions that were taken by myself and the United States D.C. Police in preparation for the joint session of Congress and the planned demonstrations for that day. And what about the planned traitorisms for that day? The real insurrection that went on inside the Capitol before anyone got there that was a citizen or Antifa. Insurrection by senators, okay, to certify China Joe as having legitimately won the presidency, okay? This was these garbage senators, quote unquote, insulating our elections against our will. We, the people who hired them. Okay, that's called insurrection. There has been much conflicting information presented by various officials in the media regarding the preparations and actions taken at D.C. today, and I would like to set the record straight from my perspective. While the violent attack that took place was unspeakable, and those responsible for this violent insurrection should be held accountable, I am proud of the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police. Oh, this is his opinion, not mine. Of the Capitol, of the D.C. Police, the vast majority of whom fought valiantly and risked their lives. They didn't have to be there. And risked their lives to protect members of Congress, their staff, and the D.C. building. Perfect hindsight does not change the fact that nothing in our collective experience or our intelligence, including intelligence provided by the FBI, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and DC Metropolitan Police, MPD, indicated that a well-coordinated armed assault on the Capitol might occur on January 6th. Having previously handled 2 major post-election demonstrations successfully utilizing an action plan that was based on intelligence assessments that had proven to be credible, reliable, and accurate, we reasonably assumed the intelligence assessment for January 6th was also correct. I have been in law enforcement for almost 30 years, the majority of that time working in special operations. During my almost 3 decades in policing, I have planned multiple presidential inaugurations, dozens of national special security events, and a number of other special events, many of which included volatile protests and various levels of civil disobedience. Suffice it to say that I have never seen anything like the violent insurrection we witnessed on January 6th. Yes, it was memorable. After the election on November 3rd, and I saw Sicknick, you don't attack people who are backing away. Okay? You don't go after people, mace them in the face, and beat them over the head with your billy club as they're backing away from you. Sick, Nick. Sick man. After the election on November 3rd, there were other large protests planned by pro-Trump supporters. On November 14th, MAGA won, and on December 12th, MAGA 2, both of which were located at the Supreme Court building and adjacent Capitol grounds, DC ground, and involved thousands of people. We handled both of these events successfully, utilizing an action plan that was based on intelligence assessments developed by us and our partner agencies. The USCP Intelligence and Interagency Coordination Division prepared intelligence assessments for both of these events that indicated that various extremist groups were expected to attend and that there was a likelihood of violence. Based on the intelligence, the action plan included coordination with our law enforcement partners, development of a staffing and civil disturbance unit plan, coordination with the congressional community, enhanced protective actions for members of Congress, and the deployment of physical crowd management devices that consisted of steel crowd control barriers. During these two protests, there was a limited amount of violence and/or injuries to officers and a number of arrests. As we prepared for the third protest, we understood that the focus of the protest would be the Capitol itself and not the Supreme Court, as in the previous two demonstrations, and that we could expect the crowd to be somewhat different in size and risk. As a standard practice, our IICD hosted a number of internal briefings and published intelligence assessments of the event. Let me download this. Where do I download this? Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. Hold on a second. Be right back. As we prepared for the third protest, we understood that the focus of the protest would be the Capitol itself, not the Supreme Court, as in the previous two demonstrations, and that we could expect the crowd to be somewhat different in size and risk. As a standard practice... Okay. As a standard practice, our IICD hosted a number of internal briefings and published intelligence assessments of the event. The most recent being published on January 3rd, 2021, 3 days before the event. The IICD reports include input from internal U.S. D.C. police intelligence officials, such as our Director of Intelligence, John Donahue, who is an expert in right-wing extremism, as well as information provided by our partner agencies, such as the FBI, U.S. Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, and the D.C. Metropolitan Police. As previously mentioned, the IICD intelligence assessment indicated that the January 6th protest rallies were expected to be similar to the previous Million MAGA March rallies in November and December 2020, which drew tens of thousands of participants. The assessment indicated that members of the Proud Boys, white supremacist groups, white supremes, Antifa, and other extremist groups were expected to participate in the January 6th event, and that they may be inclined to become violent. This was very similar to the intelligence assessment of the December 12th, 2020 MAGA 2 event. In addition, on Monday, January 1st, 2021, the USCP IICD word salad, published the Daily Intelligence Report, which provided an assessment of all the groups suspected to demonstrate on January 6, 2021. The IICD Daily Intelligence Report assessed the level of probability of acts of civil disobedience, arrests occurring based on current intelligence information as remote to improbable for all the groups expected to demonstrate on Wednesday, January 6, 2021. In addition, the Daily Intelligence Report indicated that the Secretary of Homeland Security has not issued an elevated or imminent alert at this time. At no time during the previous MAGA 1 or MAGA 2 events did the crowd attempt to storm or attack the Supreme Court building or the adjacent Capitol building. And based upon all available intelligence, nothing of that sort was expected to happen on January 6th. The USCP has successfully managed numerous large-scale protests while demonstrators the USDCP, where demonstrators have conducted illegal based on location and contentious demonstrations on the Capitol grounds and even on its steps. He's saying this so that Nancy Pelosi won't drink so much. That's why he says it's illegal to protest outside the Capitol building. Based upon our experience with the prior post-election demonstrations, our ongoing intelligence assessments and briefings, and the input from our law enforcement partners over the course of many weeks, we developed and implemented a security plan for the January 6th joint session of Congress. The USDCP implemented a number of enhancements that are to our planning for January 6, 2021, based on the intelligence we had. In preparation for the joint session of Congress, I directed that the department be placed into an all-hands-on-deck status, meaning every available sworn employee with police powers would be working. We activated the largest number of CDU platoons possible while still supporting the joint session of Congress. This allowed for the activation of approximately 7 CDU platoons, approximately 250 officers. I don't think that's enough for that whole crowd. There were millions of us there. With approximately 4 platoons being available in hard, quote-unquote, gear, helmets, protective clothing, and shields, while limited by budgetary and training restraints imposed on USDCP by the Democrats, I guess. The planned number of CDU officers has always sufficed for large demonstrations on Capitol Hill prior to January 6th. In addition, we activated civilian support for January 6th. Oh, gross. To include enhanced access to the Property Management Division. In the event officers needed replacement uniforms or equipment and vehicle services. Although we had ordered large shipment of riot helmets for our officers for the inauguration, we pushed for expedited delivery, and approximately 104 of the helmets were delivered on Monday, January 4th. We developed contingency plans in the events we had armed individuals in the crowd. In addition, we coordinated coverage for the event with the District of Columbia Fire and Emergency Medical Service. I directed an additional Tactical Combat Casualty Care, or TCCC. Kits be available in the field if needed. TCCC is specialized training and equipment that prepares officers in the field to implement emergency life-saving care to stop victims from bleeding to death as a result of a gunshot wound or injury. During my time with the DCP, I have authorized officers to carry the TCCC kits and for all new recruits to be trained in TCCC emergency medical care. On January 2nd, 2021, I contacted MPD Chief Robert Conti to discuss support if necessary for January 6th. On the morning of January 6th, MPD Assistant Chief Jeffrey Carroll and I exchanged information regarding our designated CDU Incident Command, IC. This was done in an effort to facilitate immediate command and control assets if requested. As a result of this advanced coordination, MPD had pre-staged significant CDU resources on the north side of the Capitol. Well before the planned demonstration, I worked with USDCP Assistant Chief Pittman and her Security Services Bureau to develop an expanded perimeter barrier plan. The expanded perimeter was based on the concern for First Amendment activity focused on the Capitol and large numbers of people expected. Both the House and Senate Sergeant-at-Arms approved the expanded perimeter plan. It was the heightened tensions related to the certification of the vote and the expanded perimeter that made me believe that National Guard assistance might be necessary. Which is what Trump tried to give you. peLUSHy. She's probably well sauced by now at this point in the letter. On Monday, January 4th, I approached the 2 sergeants-at-arms to request the assistance of the National Guard, as I had no authority to do so without an emergency declaration by the Capitol Police Board, DCPB. My regular interactions with the DCPB outside of our monthly meetings regarding law enforcement matters were conducted with the House and Senate Sergeant at Arms, the two members of the DCPB who have law enforcement experience. I first spoke with the House Sergeant at Arms to request the National Guard. Mr. Irving stated that he was concerned about the optics and didn't feel that the intelligence supported it. Yeah, because he's dirty. He referred me to the Senate Sergeant at Arms, who is currently the chair of the DCPB, to get his thoughts on the request. I then spoke to Mr. Stenger and again requested the National Guard. Instead of approving the use of the National Guard, however, Mr. Stenger suggested I asked them how quickly we could get support if needed and to lean forward in case we had to request assistance on January 6th. At Mr. Stenger's direction, I called William Walker, commanding officer of the DC National Guard. I advised that I had not received CPB approval, but wanted to know how many National Guards he could provide and how fast he could provide them if they were needed on Capitol Hill on January 6th. He advised that he could repurpose 125 National Guard and have them to me fairly quickly, once approved. I asked General Walker to be prepared in the event that we requested them. On Tuesday, January 5th, I hosted a virtual meeting with my executive team, all three principals of the Capitol Police Board, and a dozen of the top law enforcement and military officials from D.C., including the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, and the National Guard. This meeting focused on both the January 6th event and the upcoming presidential inauguration on January 20th. See, they never cared what we were going to say. They never cared what we were going to do. They were going to certify Joe Biden. To hell with them being treasonous rat bastards. I have the COVID. During the meeting, no entity, including the FBI, provided any intelligence indicating that there would be a coordinated violent attack on the United States Capitol. On the United States swamp. By thousands of well-equipped armed insurrectionists. In fact, all present at the meeting indicated that there was no new intelligence to report for January 6th. At no time did DHS security issue a threat advisory bulletin in reference to violent extremists planning a coordinated violent attack on D.C. It should also be noted that U.S. Secret Service planned to and did escort the Vice President of the United States to the Capitol on January 6th, which it obviously would not have done if it believed there to be a threat of a violent insurrection at the Capitol building and on its grounds. In the days leading up to January 6th, we briefed a number of members of Congress who had requested an advance briefing on our security plan and the permitted demonstration activity scheduled for January 6, 2021. It's permitted because they don't want you to interrupt them in their treason and their insurrection. That's why it's permitted. Because what is not permitted is for you to effectively interfere with their treason and insurrection. Okay? That's how I see it. The members that were briefed in advance include Chairman Blunt, Chairperson Lofgren, Chairman Ryan, and Representative Waters. Is that Maxine Waters? Dark evil forces. Dark psychic force. Maxine Waters? That's her? We informed these members of the expectations of protest, current permitted First Amendment activity on Capitol grounds. Our response planning efforts and established perimeter, as well as enhanced member security initiatives such as increased checks on residences and the ability of USDCP to respond off Capitol grounds to assist members safely getting to the Capitol if needed. Contrary to some allegations made to the media, I did not at any time misrepresent any facts to members. This was an accurate reporting of our intelligence and threat assessment at the time. Lastly, in preparation for an event, I sent an email to the USDCP assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs on the evening of Tuesday, January 5th, directing them to ensure that all roll calls and officers were fully briefed on what to expect during their shifts. a long day, large groups, and clashes that could possibly include violence. On Wednesday, January 6th, at approximately 7:15 a.m., as I was driving to work, I called NPD Inspector Robert Glover to inquire about the crowds he was seeing for the event, which was beginning at the Ellipse. Inspector Glover stated that there were already lines to get into the event, but that the crowd was compliant and he did not observe any concerning issues. I then checked at the USDCP command center where I would be for the event. I arrived at the command center where I remained to monitor the activity on the National Mall and the Ellipse. I sat at the center console with Assistant Chiefs Pittman and Thomas nearby. Halfway done now. A little over. We were monitoring the actions and demeanor of the crowd, which at the time did not raise any concerns. When we received word at 12:52 p.m. that a pipe bomb had been located at the RNC headquarters, immediately adjacent to Capitol grounds, we responded immediately to coordinate and send resources to the scene, including a number of officers, officials, and a bomb squad. We also dispatched resources to look for other explosive devices, suspects, and vehicles. At almost exactly the same time, we observed a large group of individuals approaching the west front of the Capitol. When the group arrived at the perimeter, they did not act like any group of protesters I had ever seen. Unlike other heated protests, these protesters did not simply congregate to angrily voice their grievances. As soon as this group arrived at our perimeter, they immediately began to fight violently with the officers and to tear apart the steel crowd control barriers, using them to assault the officers, who were also assaulting people. He didn't say that. I said the part about how the officers were also assaulting people. Okay, because I saw it. Okay, that's my perspective. As soon as the group arrived, it was immediately clear that their primary goal was to defeat our perimeter as quickly as possible to get past the police line. This mob was like nothing I have seen in my law enforcement career. The group consisted of thousands of well-coordinated, well-equipped, violent criminals. Really? Really? Here's where you're lying, former chief. The mob. They had weapons, chemical munitions, protective equipment, explosives, and climbing gear. I didn't see no explosives. I heard explosives going off. I couldn't tell where they were coming from. A number of them were wearing radio earpieces, indicating a high level of coordination. Given these factors, it was clear to me at 1 p.m. that the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Excuse me. I called MPD and requested assistance, and they responded immediately. I also requested assistance from the U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division and other law enforcement agencies. I notified the two sergeant-at-arms by 1:09 p.m., and I urgently needed support and asked them to declare a state of emergency and authorize the National Guard. I was advised by Mr. Irving that he needed to run it up the chain of command. I continued to follow up with Mr. Irving, who was with Mr. Stenger at the time, and he advised me that he was waiting to hear back from congressional leadership, but expected authorization at any moment. At approximately 1:50 p.m.,